We could take the entire meeting, and I'm more than happy to do that to talk about this. I don't think anybody.
You want me to we can put you under other business, Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll move it to the top of the agenda.
Yeah. Yeah. Then we
I
can
mean, this was all, you expected all this. They're trying to save money, obviously.
I'll just say one thing. I just wish they could have gotten something for him, and now we got nothing. But
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hopefully they're going to use that money on something good. I would like that.
They're not going to spend the money. They're not going to have ticket sales this year. You know that,
Yeah, but how are the Dodgers spending money?
All right, it's 4:00. Do we have Barney?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Barney doesn't care about this. Okay, are ready, guys? Everyone ready?
Yes, we're live on YouTube.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, I want a call to order the Finance Committee meeting of the Park District of Highland Park for December 3rd, 2020 at exactly 4 p.m. Roxanne, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein,
Here.
Commissioner Grossberg,
Here.
President Ruttenberg.
I am here.
We have a quorum. The next item on the agenda is public comments for items on the agenda. Executive Director Romes, has anyone from the public submitted any emails to be read aloud for public comments?
No, they have not.
Thank you, Director Romes. Okay, next item on the agenda, moving along, is the updated 2021 budget review. Director Peters to present.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. All right, so hopefully on your screen you are seeing the budget presentation 2021, and we'll get going. All right, so if you recall, when we last met in November, we just stated that we were not really sure what 2021 is going to bring for us, and so the budget is based on being in phase 4 for all of 21. We want to remember that a budget is a living document that can be formally amended to reflect significant changes that occur during the year, or it can be updated by creating projections. We always hope to exceed the revenues that we show in a budget. And of course, we always attempt to spend less than what we show as far as expenses. And so with that, we're going to go through the budget calendar. So obviously today is December 3rd. We're having our second budget discussion. We're going to look at fund budget comparisons. We're going to look at our recreation funds by center. And we did create a slide based on input at the last Finance Committee meeting on back in November. And so after this, we're going to have another Finance Committee meeting on December 17th. And at that point, we will look at the draft budget book, and that will include the capital fund. And then we do have a park board workshop on January 12th, where we will do our formal budget presentation at that time. And then at the park board meeting on February 23rd, we hope to pass our budget ordinance and then get that filed with the county. If for any reason we have some sort of a delay in this process, we can always do things at the park board workshop on March 9th or at the park board meeting March 23rd, because we do have until March 31st to file our actual budget. And so with that, we're going to move on to our district-wide budget comparison, which we did look at this.
Mary Lynn, before, I just have a quick question.
Oh, yes.
So this is a one-time issue with regard to how we're, the timing of the budget. And next year, are we going back to the calendar year?
If we want to, we can. Many districts around us actually don't do it until after the end of the year. Just, you know, they feel they have a better grip on things. So you have until the last day of the third month after your year end. So we have till March 31st every year if we wanted to do that.
Okay. So my suggestion, when we have a quiet, agenda for the Finance Committee, that we put back on the agenda, when should we be doing our budget? What's our timing? Because I know our former president, Scott Myers, was very adamant about doing it in the way we've been doing it the last couple of years, and doing it based on a calendar year, because previously we used to do it similar what we're doing this year. So we can have that discussion moving forward. What's the best way of doing that? But I'm not going to have that today. I just think we should talk about it sometime in the future.
Sure. I think when you have more predictable times, it's relatively easier to get it done by year end.
Okay, that's more time I want to spend on right now, but just put in a note that we'll talk about it another time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks. Okay, so on this slide, we did look at this last time. We are going to be comparing our 2020 budget to our 2021 budget, just sort of for lack of something good to compare it to. A 2019 actual, was during a year with no COVID, and our 2020 projections kind of tough too. So this is what we went with. And so year over year, when we look at this, our revenue, we are showing a decrease of about 14%, and what we are budgeting for revenue in our phase 4 for 2021. And then our expenses pretty closely follow with a decrease of about 10%. And so what we really want to point out here is the surplus for 2020 versus 2021. And you can see that that goes down by about 1.2 million with a 73% change. But we want to keep in mind that the surplus reduction is really pretty thoughtfully contemplated, as it has been presented also in the 5-year funding model for capital projects. And the reductions that we show here really only impacts capital. And you see that as we show transfers below and we explain where our transfers are. And so that the reductions really aren't affecting operations. It's just the capital transfers at the end of the year. And when you look at that year over year, you're really showing a 4% reduction in what our deficits overall spending and transfers would be. And so what that consists of, our transfers here, which are very consistent, our transfers in, those are the monies that we use towards the debt service fund to pay off our debt each year, every December 15th. And so that's in a ratio of 40% out of the general fund, and then 60% out of the recreation fund. And then additionally, what we have done is we are budgeting to transfer 1.5 million from the recreation fund to the capital fund, and then another $300,000 from the special recreation fund to the capital fund, which gives us 1.8 million headed towards the capital fund at the end of 2021. And we know that those, of course, are reductions. This year, we plan on transferring $150,000 from special recreation and $1 million from recreation. And so that's what I have on this slide. So we'll
does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, before we go back, can we go back, please?
Of course.
Go ahead, President Ruttenberg.
I'm going to go back to the previous slide.
Okay.
Just remind us, if you would, 2020 actual, projected actual, percent decrease of revenue and percent decrease of expenses. Do you have those at the tip of your fingers?
Not percent. Like I believe it's about $1 million in revenue, $1 million or 1.5. No,
I will say, if there's any questions that we can't answer tonight, we certainly will get them back in writing within the next 24 hours. Unless you want us to look something up immediately.
No, I was just curious, trying to recall. We're showing the 21 versus 20, and I was budgets, and I know it's apples to apples doing it this way, but I was just trying to recall the numbers that we had of the 2020 actual to see what the percent change would be, if it would be comparable to the budget changes. That's all.
So my suggestion is that when you present this to the board, if you have another column with the actual, so we could at least know what we budgeted, what actually happened, and what we're planning on for 2021.
Yeah, the budget book actually will have that for sure. So
okay, so in this slide, if you can just build that additional column in, then we can use that as a reference.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. If we can.
Okay. Commissioner Ruttenberg, do you have anything? Commissioner Grossberg?
Nope.
I just have one question. So I just want to understand this. So in a normal year, let's say 2019, what was our transfer from our rec fund to our capital fund?
I believe 2.5 million.
Okay, so 2.5 million in 2019. In 2020, we budgeted a transfer of how much?
That was also 2.5 million.
And we're only actually doing $1 million, right?
Right, yes.
Okay, and then 2021, we're budgeting $500,000 more than we actually did in 2020. We're doing 1.5 million. That's what we're budgeting.
We're budgeting $500,000 more than what we are projecting.
Actually, more than we're actually doing in 20.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, okay, all right, thank you. Anybody else have any more questions? Okay, next slide.
Okay, so next up, we have our 2021 fund balance projections. And the most important thing we want to look at on this slide is down here, which are our projected ending fund balances. So while they are healthy, it is important to note that our financial advisors are recommending greater than usual fund balances until the pandemic is over in our operating funds, which would be the general and recreation fund. So these two amounts down here. We may have to rely on these funds if the state pivots backwards in our phases, or if we were to go back to some sort of a lockdown. And staff feels it is most fiscally responsible for us to, try to maintain these really at the levels where we're showing them right now. And so we're going to just take a moment to look at what we have put together here and how things are looking. These are estimated based on the numbers that we've been showing you when we do our COVID projections every month. And our revenues for next year, again, they are for phase 4. What's significantly different is the special recreation fund, because we did our truth and taxation 0% increase, and we did that with the special recreation fund. And so while this is usually 800,000 or 900,000 in revenue, that's at 480. We can also see a debt service, planning on zeroing out that fund. We can see capital projects. We plan on spending roughly 5.5 million on maintaining and improving structures around the district. We have our usual transfers for debt, again, the 40 and 60% ratio into debt service. And then here's our transfers from recreation and special recreation into capital again. And so when you get down here and you look at what our projected fund balances would be at the end of 2021, they are all higher than what our board policies are. Special rec is pretty close to the 15%, but we knew that when we levied the 0% tax. And general and rec are at 63 and 41%. But again, the two things to keep in mind: one, we're in a pandemic. It is being recommended that we do keep higher fund reserves on hand. And then the other thing to keep in mind is, because we are budgeting for phase 4, our expenditure amounts are a couple $1 million less than what would normally be reflected here. And so when we get to 2022 and we hope to have COVID far in our rearview mirror, these expense amounts would be greater. And so we would want to have greater amounts on hand, because keep in mind that, when you compute 25% of your fund balance, it is based on your expenditures. You want to have cash on hand to start the year, because our taxes don't start coming in until May. And oftentimes, with programming and services we provide, you expend money before the revenue, flow starts following in after that. So that's what this schedule is depicting. Does anyone have any questions on this?
Commissioner Grossberg?
No, thank you.
President Runberg?
Yes, one question. We're showing a total at the end of the year of $16 million.
Mm-hmm.
And that's reflecting 63%, 41 and 17. In a non-COVID year, we would have spent down at least $1 million or $2 million more than that 16 million, wouldn't we? Is that what this is telling us?
So, it really comes down to how much we want to transfer to capital projects and how much we spend there. Because while our expenses would be up more, we would also anticipate our revenues to be up significantly more too. And so, we would come down to greater fund balances, and then that would probably make us want to transfer more money, out of recreation and out of special recreation over into capital projects.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I understand. Again, as I keep saying in all these meetings, we have a bank account that at the end of the year will have $16 million.
Yeah, in essence, yeah, that is correct.
And I meant to say, in essence, $16 million, and in a non-COVID year, that might have been 12 to 13 million.
Right, we would probably, be wanting to spend our fund balances down more via spending on maintaining and improving, things throughout the district.
Right, thank you.
Okay, the only comment I have is just to be a little clearer, below the line, you have the fund balance policy. If you can actually state what the fund balance policy, I believe it's 30, 30, and 15. Is that correct?
It's 25,
Oh.
25, and 15.
Okay, so if you would have those figures, I have a line item for those percentages, and then if you would have also have a line item so we know of the percentage that we're over the fund balance policy, so we know that, so it's hitting us right in the face that we are doing what you're asking, what your financial people are telling us to overfund our funds at this point while we deal with the COVID-19 issues.
Right. So Cal, you said hit you in the face. So watch this. I think you requested this last time.
Yes,
So
I did. I was going to say that this is great. This is over the 5 years, but I like to see that on every slide because I want to keep because we don't have one slide next to each other. We don't get books anymore. We don't get this. We're looking at a computer screen. So even on the last slide, if you could just keep reminding us what our fund balance policy is.
Okay, absolutely. We can do that.
Okay.
So here, I think, gets us to kind of what you were asking for last time and now alluding to again, but we did drop in some actual figures from 2017, 18, and 19. These are our projections right now for 2020, and then this is our budget for 2021 that we're working with right now. And so we did break it up between our three funds that we have fund balance policies for from the board. And so you can see in our general fund what our expenditures were for the past 3 years, what they are for projected for 2020, and then where we're budgeting for next year. And then you take 25% of that to get what your fund balance needs to be in order to not violate our policy. And so it's roughly 1 to 1.5 million. And then here we have bolded what our actual fund balances are for each of those 5 years. And you'll see the differences. And then you'll see what our fund balance percent on hand is. And this is where you really see this year jumping out at us. Again, we have cut expenses, very much so this year. And we are also transferring, pretty much bare bones. We're anticipating transferring just $1 million to the capital fund at year-end instead of $2.5 million. So, this shows a very healthy fund balance. But again, this is what our financial advisors are recommending, that we do maintain healthy fund balances in case, we are closed down again or something else happens, during the pandemic that's unforeseen. Going into 2021, at the end of that, where we end up at 63% again, you do still want a higher fund balance because going into 2022, we hope to be back at regular operations, which, we generally have higher expenditures during regular operations. So if we carry that thinking down to the recreation fund, we have the same thing happening there. We're showing our expenditures each year over the 5 years. Again, we have a 25% fund policy. And so we're carrying that, showing that each of the years versus the bolded, what our true fund balances were. And then we have our difference between our policy mandated fund balance and where we were, and again, the percentages. And again, you can see that our projected fund balance for 2020 is greater than what we have in our other years normally. And again, that is very intentional and very much affected by how much we want to transfer the capital fund at the end of the year. And when we look at the special rec fund, that's a little bit different than the other two. For one thing, our policy there is 15%, and it's just, a much smaller fund. It's under $1 million fund. So you can see our expenditures are much less. We have our fund balance policies. We have where our fund balance is, our difference. And then when you look at 2020, this was really fueling our desire to have a 0% or a flat property tax increase this year because we did not make a scheduled payment for a building that had been budgeted for, that $350,000 NSSRA building, and because of the loss in companions due to loss in programming this year. That's how we were able to come to the decision to have a flat tax. And then you can see in next year, though, our expenditures are the highest they've been in the past 5 years. And again, that's because our 350 carries over. And then we have all of the regular expenditures that we would normally have coming out of that fund. And we do know, and again, this was, very carefully thought through, but at the end of next year, we will be quite close to that 15% policy at 17%. However, we have also stated that if some sort of an ADA project comes up that we feel really needs to take place, we would just take the funds out of the capital projects fund and fund it that way. So that's how we look with our 5-year fund balance history. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Commissioner Grossberg?
No, I went through this. Brian explained this one to me, my questions, so I'm good.
President Ruttenberg?
No questions.
The only question I have is based on the advice that you're getting is that we should be having larger fund balances this year rather than years in the past. I see that with the general fund that we accomplished that being at 63%. The rec fund, it appears that we're pretty much where we are on a normal year, going back to 17, 18, and 19. So do we have a large enough cushion in the rec fund?
Cal, I think you're a year off.
I'm looking at the budget 2021, we're 41%. And we're 41, which is comparable to what we've done in 18 and 19.
Oh, you were, yeah, okay. I don't think anyone knew what you were pointing to. Got it.
Yeah, okay.
So that's a good question. If we felt differently about things as 2021 is going on, we can change the amount that we want to transfer. We can reduce it like we did this year. We had originally budgeted $2.5 million transfer, and now we're looking at doing $1 million transfer. So we could reduce the transfer if we want. The hope is that we won't actually be in phase 4 all year. I think we're hoping that the second part of the year, things are better once the vaccine is administered and, things can start going back to normal. But I understand what you're saying. And if, we feel that we need to go back and try to have, something larger looking, in the budget, I'm sure we could go back and try to rework that.
So really the only way materially that we can change that percentage is if we lower the transfer from the rec fund to the capital fund. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Because we always like to say we don't want to really affect our operations. So we affect things right with our transfers. Okay.
So I see what you're trying to do. And I understand the policy you're trying to implement of having larger fund balances on hand than our policy. But what I'm seeing here is just still pretty comparable we've done in the years past. So as we move forward and have these meetings, I want to make sure that we're tracking this to make sure that we're hitting that 41% and we're not going below, because I agree with you. I think we need to have larger fund balances this year than we would normally have, and that our fund balance policy provides because of the unknown of COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yes, agreed.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else, or questions or comments? Okay, next slide.
Okay. And this is just a slightly different look at our budget by fund. Mostly here, what we do is in the general fund, we break it out between admin and parks. And historically, we have shown this to you in the budget book, and it will be in there again. But we do just like to show, obviously parks is not its own fund. It is part of the general fund. However, it's important to keep in mind we have 800 acres of property that we maintain. And so that costs roughly $3 million a year to do so. The rest of everything in here, I think we've pretty much just looked at on the couple of previous slides as far as, again, we can see our special rec revenues are cut pretty much in half because of keeping the tax levy flat. We're showing our transfers again from general and rec to the debt service. We're showing what we are budgeting to transfer over to the capital fund, keeping the debt service fund at a zero balance. Pretty much, I think the same information except for the breaking out of parks. But does anyone have any questions on the schedule?
Commissioner Grossberg?
Not really. I mean, I guess I understand that the parks have to be maintained. This is just like way out in left field. Is there ever such a thing as kind of letting some fields go for a while and then just coming back to them later to save any money? I'm really not recommending that. I'm just wondering if there's any precedent for that. Or
That I would have to defer to either Dan or Brian. I'm
Right.
not sure what we've done.
Wait, can you just repeat the question?
yeah,
Terry?
it was just about taking care of the parks. And again, I don't want to even think that I'm recommending this. I'm just wondering if there's just anything that could be done about keeping a portion of a park sort of fallow or just kind of let it go natural for a season.
Yeah. I mean, I'll let Dan give his perspective. I mean, we certainly did do that this year. We did not maintain our parks to the typical level in effort to save money, and obviously we didn't have as many baseball, softball games, soccer games, things of that nature. So we were able to operate on a lower cost basis for the district. So that is always possible. This is for 2021. This is fully operating, and the reason that we budgeted this way, and we can always make the decision throughout the year, in the beginning of the year, to change this. But the reason we estimated it at basically full capacity, because phase 4 really means all of our parks are open to the public, all of our playgrounds are open, all of our ball fields are in use, because that's what phase 4 basically was for 2020 even. And so certainly we can make that decision if we want to at any point, or even now to just say, we're gonna maintain less, or something of that nature, if that's a desire that the board would want to do based on the community's, what you would believe the community's attitude and interest would be in regards to that.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question, and that makes sense.
Yeah, it was just, just a thought. So it seems like you've already started doing that last summer because things weren't in use, but you're planning on this being a full summer. So you just want it in the budget in case.
Yeah, I mean, and we fully anticipate opening up the pool, obviously all of our beaches, and we anticipate that outdoor recreation is going to be highly sought after as it was this past summer. And so, cleaning bathrooms, maintaining parks and playgrounds and fields, where we're budgeting right now would be full capacity. If at any point we were again at a phase 3 or not quite at a phase 4, we would adjust appropriately and not be overstaffed, or we would reduce our vendors or our contracts, our mowing contracts and things of that nature.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else, Jerry?
Nope.
President Runberg?
Not for me.
I have nothing also. All right, next slide.
Okay, we are going to just briefly touch back on the general fund again. We did discuss this last time. Just a few of the highlights or lowlights in this case. Our interest income is really going to take a nosedive in our budget just because interest rates are, I think, about 0.05% at this point. So that hurts us a little bit. We do have salary and wages going down by almost 9% year over year in the budget. Insurance, we had talked about an increase of about 24%, and that is largely due to unemployment insurance. Again, we had furloughed staff and laid off staff. And this year, the government did take care of those unemployment insurance costs for us, but so far for next year, there is nothing in the cards that says they're going to pick up that cost for us. So that budget item is going from roughly $5,000 to $150,000. And then we do, with our decreased salaries and wages, we have our decreased pension contributions. And at the end of the day, though, with our transfers and such too, that we show down here at the bottom for the debt service, we are running at about a 2% or $50,000 less of a surplus 2020 budget to 2021. Do we have any questions on this before we move on?
Commissioner Grossberg,
No,
President Runberg?
No, thank you.
Okay, me either. Next.
All right, so on this next slide, we're gonna just look at parks again. And so there's just a couple of things to go over here. So fees and charges. So first of all, parks really, right, they're not really meant to be a money maker for us. It's really about maintaining our 800 acres, but we do charge some fees and charges, two of which have decreased significantly in the budget. One is our picnic fees or picnic licenses, and then the other is for the dog park fees. We know that we have the washed out route over at Moraine, and so that has affected our fees and charges on the revenue line item there. We do want to point out that salaries and wages are pretty much staying flat at parks, and then our contractual services are increasing somewhat, and this is largely due to we are installing some automatic door locks on our outdoor bathrooms so that bathrooms can be locked or unlocked remotely. We also have to do some bridge inspections, which are not necessarily in the budget year over year. And then also it is time for us to do a light pole assessment of various light poles throughout the parks to make sure that those are safe too. And that's really what I have as far as highlights for parks. When we come down to the bottom, we can see year over year in the budget. Overall, we have an increase in our deficit of about 5%.
Questions? Commissioner Grossberg?
nope.
President Runberg?
No,
I have none either. Okay, next slide, please.
Okay. Okay, next, we're gonna look at special rec fund, very basic. Again, you can see the reduction in our tax revenue because of the tax levy that we are issuing with the flat zero increase there. Our contractual services are pretty much the same year over year. We had budgeted in here the $350,000 payment for the building, and that is now in next year's budget. You can see that we had budgeted a $550,000 transfer, but we are now recommending a $150,000 transfer. And then next year, we are budgeting for a $300,000 transfer. And that's all I have for this fund. Do we have any questions?
Any questions? I know we looked at this a lot when we were talking about the levy.
No.
Okay, next slide.
And debt services is pretty basic as well. We'll just take a second on that. We really don't even levy these taxes. They come out of being filed when we file bond paperwork and such. So, you know, everything in here is pretty much flat, and you can see even our transfers in the 2 years, year over year, there's just a $634 difference, which comes from when you issue bonds, you try to keep them very flat to the taxpayer so that while we may recall bonds or pay off bonds, issue new bonds, you always try to keep that amount the same year over year so that there is no effect to the tax bill. So I would definitely probably call this flat too. It's $634 difference, you know, across the district. So very small. And then we come down to a zero balance in that fund. Do we have questions on this one?
Questions, comments?
Nope.
Hearing none. All right, next slide.
Okay. All right, we'll look at the capital fund. It's not real exciting either, these couple of funds. The one big difference, of course, we had our bond proceeds budgeted for in 2020 and none in 2021. We do have, we're anticipating the second half of our $200,000 OSLAD grant to come in next year. So we have a little bit of an increase. and granting opportunities that we're anticipating. We had budgeted in 2020 about $7.6 million in capital projects, which did not come to fruition. But we are now targeting $5.3 million to spend in capital in 2021. And then you can see down here too, we are saying the $1.5 million transfer from recreation, the $300,000 from special recreation. Again, we had originally budgeted 2.5 million from recreation and 550,000 from recreation, but we know that we are not going to pursue that this year. And that's all I really have on this slide, unless there's any questions.
Questions, comments? Okay, next slide.
Okay. All right, and so now the rest of our afternoon, we're going to spend looking at recreation. So we did look at this slide last week, but let's just remember what we had talked about. We're budgeting at phase 4 for 2021. And so in doing so, things like programs, camps, and special events, if you look at those 3 numbers over here, they show very significant decreases in budgeted revenue. Joining with that then would be their correlating expenses for programs, camps, and special events. So you'll see down here significant decreases in expenses to go with those decreased revenue line items. The other big thing up here as far as decreased revenues would be our memberships line item, which is the GEM memberships. We anticipate those to be down roughly $1 million, which is 65%. And so that is showing us an overall decrease in revenue in rec of about 19%. When we further looking down here at some of the more key expenses, we do want to point out that salary and wages are being budgeted at 11% decrease 2020 versus 2021. And so with that, we would have decreased insurance by about 5% and decreased pension contributions of almost 13%. And then finally, with the decreased programs, camps, and special events, we are then budgeting decreased materials and supplies and such roughly 28%. And so overall, if we come down here and look at our net difference between our revenue and expenses, in 2020, we had a surplus of $2.8 million before transfers, and we're budgeting for 2021 to have a $2 million surplus revenues over expenses. So that is about a 25% decrease. And in dollars and cents, it's about a $700,000 decrease. And then we have our transfers down here. But again, we know that we are going to transfer less out in 2020. And then this reflects our transfer of our $1.5 million for capital projects, and then the other $900,000 for debt service. And so overall, actually, had we transferred the amount we would have wanted to with a normal 2020 budget, we would have a smaller deficit than usual. But of course, that's because of the reduction of our transfer to the capital fund. But do we have any questions on this before we look at this by cost center?
Questions, comments? Commissioner Grossberg?
No, not if we're breaking it down.
President Rudberg?
I agree with Terry.
Okay. It's a hat trick. Okay, next item, please.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to look at the recreation fund by center and focus in on a couple of centers that kind of stand out more than others. We're going to start up here with admin, where we show this increase of $118,000 in revenue, and that is basically a tax revenue increase. So keep in mind, we did increase our taxes in the rec and general funds by CPI. But of course, then that is offset with a decrease in special rec to get to our 0% increase. But that is why we do see a 2.24 increase here. And keeping in mind that CPI is 2.3. As far as this decrease in expenses, this is basically the reduction in our transfer year over year of the $1 million. We again had budgeted 2.5 million for 2020, and we are budgeting 1.5 million in 2021.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt? And I apologize for this.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I want to go back to the revenue from taxes.
Yeah.
That's to pick up changes in assessed valuation and new growth. Wasn't that the effect that, and so that, again, I'm going back to a taxpayer portion of our bill that goes to the Park District of Highland Park is not increasing.
No, it's
between
not.
2021 payment and 2020 payment. So
That's right.
that even though we're showing we're getting more money, it's not on the houses in Highland Park if they were to remain the same.
Right. So if you recall, we just previously showed almost a $400,000 decrease in special rec. We're only showing an increase of about 118,000.
Okay, and I just wanted to make it, 'cause I think that's an important distinction, that we are collecting, but from, should we say, an alternative universe type of collection. We're not collecting from Cal's house and Terry's house and my house.
Right. I mean, everyone is still paying their taxes, but they're paying the same taxes, and
Right.
the way it's hitting our funds is different.
Right.
Okay, anything else, Marilyn? Keep on going.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna go down now and look at athletics and camps. And so something you'll notice in both of these categories, and I'm just going to sort of blanket them because they are similar in that when we are in phase 4, both athletics and camps, as you can see, gets hit in revenue, right? So athletics is down about 30%, camps is down over 60%. And that, of course, we have two issues. We have things that we're just not allowed to do anymore, especially in athletics. Camps, we had, significantly reduced participation, really significant reduced participation in both we would be budgeting for. And so when we have significantly less participation, you might think, well, then expenses should pretty much mirror that too, but that is not the case as much in these two areas, because not only is participation reduced and what we can do reduced, we have to have groupings of less participants. And so maybe where we used to have 15 participants in a class, now we're limited to only, 8 students with maybe an instructor and an assistant. So again, we kind of get double-edged sorted on the, both by just reduced participation and then reduce, we'll call it class size or participant size in each section. And that's all I have to really point out on the slide too, unless you have specific questions.
Questions, comments, Commissioner Grossberg?
No, go ahead.
President Ruttenberg?
I'm good.
My only comment is at a future meeting, can you put just give us a short presentation of what the deadlines for making decisions with regard to camps are for 2021, obviously, depending on the different stages that we may be in with regard to the pandemic. Because I know that, last year we were making decisions kind of on the fly up until the last minute. And I think obviously we have more time to plan this year than we did last year. So if you can give us a short presentation, what your thinking is with regard to camp, whether you do that at the finance committee or at a workshop of the board, either way, I'd like to see a short presentation about that.
Okay. Go on.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Maybe at the December board meeting, if the board wants to hear that.
Just a short presentation.
Yeah, and I will say we did send an email out to the community today about camp, but we'd be happy to give you kind of the background about our philosophy there and what the plan is. So sure,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks. Next slide.
Okay, now we have 4 more centers on this page. We're going to look at special events briefly. So what happens with special events, right? I would call this more of sort of a loss leader category. This is things that, you know, we're out doing for the community that we're not really looking to make money on. And so you can see historically, last year in the budget, we would have anticipated a deficit of about $126,000. In the 2021 budget, because we are not able to do as many special events or the same special events that we once did, we are definitely showing a reduction in revenue, but we are also showing a significant reduction in expenses too. And so year over year in this budget, we are actually looking to reduce our budgeted deficit by about $42,000. And the rest of the items on this page, I don't think really require much addressing. We do anticipate having the aquatic center open, but to a much reduced capacity. And I guess I'm probably not the best person to speak to the plan, but definitely a reduced capacity with then less staffing required to be there as well. And then we have Rosewood Beach on here, the interpretive center and the beach. They're pretty, you know, I would say similar year over year. Not a lot of comment to be had here, but does anyone have any further questions?
If I can, real quick, I just want to add two
Go
quick
on.
things based on what Mary Lynn was reporting on Hidden Creek and then on Rosewood. So for Hidden Creek, one of the we do plan on this budget does plan on opening the pool next summer. However, the plan would not be to sell memberships at this point. It would be mostly daily and by reservation based on phase 4 guidelines, which is why that number is significantly lower. And then Rosewood, we are going to give Rosewood. Rosewood and Park Avenue when we get there. We're going to give a report at the next board meeting, in the last board meeting in December, on all of our lakefront properties, and we will kind of dig into a little bit of detail as to what our plan is regarding parking and access control and things of that nature at all of our lakefront properties, including security and things like that. That was all I wanted to comment.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions on this slide?
Anybody?
Well,
Okay, next slide.
oh no, hold,
Oh, sorry,
There.
Commissioner Grossberg.
well, again, about Hidden Creek, you were, Marilyn was mentioning, like, unfortunately, when camps go down, the expenses, you know, just because there's fewer people there doesn't mean the expenses still aren't there. And then you think about Hidden Creek, which you talk about loss leader, right? I mean, we generally lose money on that even in a good year.
Right.
Is that going to be exacerbated this year if we open up this giant thing and do all the things that we have to do to maintain it, yet we can only bring in a few people? Won't that make our ratio worse?
So if we look at what we're showing here, you're right. This is definitely another loss leader facility. So in 2020, we had budgeted to have a deficit of about $136,000. And for 2021, you know, $8,000 more of a deficit. So it's about a 6% increased deficit year over year in the budget for Hidden Creek.
Okay, but is that because we're planning to open it? Is that $8,000 means we're just planning on doing $8,000 less of business, or the margins are worse, or is it because we're opening it for a smaller crowd? It almost seems like
Yeah.
it'll be worse than that.
Yeah, I mean, there are significant adjustments that are being made. For example, with the service that we plan to provide next year, it's not a typical summer, as we just kind of said, so memberships won't be offered. So we're sort of breaking out the time frame to allow for lap swimming in the morning, which will be based on a reservation basis and daily fees. And then, or actually, we may actually sell a small membership for that. But and then we will allow time for camps to come in from our own camps as well as other districts. And then we will allow time for the community to reserve time as well. So it's really a delicate balance with providing the services that the community desires to have and what you would consider an essential program for our community. And the fact that, you know, we still have to have just as many lifeguards in the pool, so the expense
Right.
remains high. But we were able to cut down on, you know, some expenses based on knowing that we're not going to be able to deliver the exact service that we normally do. So we were able to reduce expenses as well. So there's kind of a balance there. And does that make sense, Terry?
Yeah, and right, and piggybacking on Cal's point, I think that, I mean, I wonder what the challenge will be about hiring. You know, if there's any uncertainty as to whether we'll open in terms of lifeguards and things like that, it'll just be a unique opening. So it would be really good to know what your thinking is about. I know you're thinking about it now, but like deadlines and stuff like Cal was saying.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. And we can include some of that in our when we do our lakefront update, some of that regarding Hidden Creek as well, to give the board an idea what our thought process is there, for sure.
Okay.
Okay, anything else, Terry?
Nope.
President Ruttenberg?
Not at this time.
Okay, next slide, please.
So Brian just touched on that we'll be going over Park Avenue more closely at our next workshop meeting. The ice arena is really holding its own year over year as far as budget 2020 to 2021. Golf maintenance has actually reduced its expenses by $21,000 in the budget year over year. So that will look better. There'll be less of a deficit there. And then Sunset Valley is showing a $50,000 increase year over year in its surplus. Do we have any questions on this slide?
Anybody? Okay, next slide. Next slide.
Okay, here, this slide is mostly the recreation center. So we have admin at the rec center. And so we, of course, are expecting a decline budget over budget for admin at the rec center, a large reduction in expenses as well to go with that. And so the overall deficit for admin at the rec center is expected to go down by about $500,000. If we then pull that in with the center fitness portion of that, again, our memberships are really anticipated to decrease there by about $1 million. And then we do have some correlating reductions of expenses as well. But overall, the deficit for recreation center fitness is increasing by almost by over $900,000. And then finally, a recreation center, the aquatics area, that is pretty much holding its own year over year in the budget.
Let me ask a question, because this is presented in three parts. Total expenses versus total revenue for the recreation center. We have to add these numbers.
So it's about $400,000 deficit, change in deficit overall.
No. Help me. Budget 2020 revenue versus expenses would have yielded how much profit?
So
Deficit still in 2020, but how much? Yeah, we'd have to add up all three there. So
Well, I'm just trying to get a picture. Do we make 800,000, $1 million, $10 million on the rec center each year?
no.
I mean,
So
what
it
is
generally,
yeah.
it generally fluctuates from about a break even to a loss of $100,000. There's been years where we've lost up to $250,000, and there's been years where we've made up to $100,000. So it fluctuates from year to year based on a variety of factors. Obviously, memberships are very month to month, as it's a very competitive atmosphere, obviously, and it's fluid based on memberships, based on rentals for the facility, and a variety of factors. So it really fluctuates quite a bit.
Yeah,
But,
it would,
yeah.
Brian, it would be helpful if you could provide us, not necessarily as part of this process, but I'd like to understand other park districts that provide a recreation center. Do they have the similar, it loses money, it gains money? Or
Yeah.
are others, for some reason, because of competition, able to run at a profit? I think that's something we probably have not really focused on before.
Yeah, and we can certainly provide some information. It's very rarely apples to apples with other, because they're typically community centers, not just fitness centers, like ours is. Ours does not just serve the fitness population; it serves basketball, youth sports, and things of that nature. And so, but we can certainly give a comparative at the best we can. As how we compare to, say, Glenview and another Deerfield who have similar type facilities.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Anything else? My only comment is that I know that we're all cautiously optimistic that a vaccine will be available, and maybe for the general population in the second quarter of next year. Hopefully over the second and third quarter being administered. So I think that, obviously we have certain things that have been significantly materially impacted by COVID: camps, athletics, the rec center, ice arena. And if we could, I don't want to do this all in one meeting because it would take too long, but if we can break it out into like one or two of these fun center, these fun centers, whatever, however you call these, and what your plans are to basically reintroduce these facilities to our constituents who some people have not been to the rec centers and will not been to the rec center in a year, or not participated in something because of COVID, and then what your plans are for each one of these facilities and programming that have been materially impacted by COVID, what your plans are. Again, I don't want to do it all in one presentation; it would take too long. But if we kind of break it up, and we could do this in the first quarter of next year, but some type of, so we could see what your plans are, and we frankly, we're a lot of us are users of these facilities also, so we can give our thoughts and input on that also. I mean, I think that would be productive.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely coordinate that with other agenda items for whether it be finance committee or board meetings. I know, like I said, we are giving some updates on the lakefront, and we will give an update on the recreation center probably in January, so we can filter in the other facilities over the course of the first quarter of the year.
Okay. That's all I got. Anybody else? Anything else on this?
We have to do tennis.
Oh, let's go fast. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
Brian.
Good call. Yes. So tennis, we are showing a 24% reduction in what we anticipate for indoor tennis revenue. Again, we then have a correlating reduction in expenses there. So overall, we usually have about $150,000 surplus. We're anticipating about a $25,000 surplus. So that's a reduction in our surplus of about $126.
Do you want to go to outdoor tennis in the next page? Just to kind
I am. Sorry, yeah, the way the split isn't so good, but here's outdoor tennis. It's really holding its own year over year, I would say. Of course, outdoor tennis, people are outside. We are anticipating increased revenue there by about $13,000. Increased expenses that go along with it, with our professional full-time folks helping out with lessons, and overall just a slight reduction in our surplus year over year.
Oh, how do we collect, what is the revenue from tennis? Is that, again, since I'm not a tennis player, and I've lost touch with how we do it, how do we collect revenue for outdoor tennis?
So tennis for outdoor is a lot of it's summer camp and summer programs for youth or adults. I would say that's the lion's share, as well as some private lessons during the outdoor. Those three categories.
Is there any consideration to, or do we charge to use the clay courts?
We do charge a small fee for non-residents. This year we did actually charge residents as well, and the main reason was because of the pandemic, and obviously it's a significant maintenance cost to have clay courts. So because of our financial situation and wanting to make sure we recovered that maintenance, we did charge a small fee to residents. Mitch, is that accurate? I just want to make sure I'm giving the right information.
Yep, that is accurate. Yep.
Okay. So normal times we don't charge residents, but we did this year, and it is something we're looking at. It's a tough one. We don't staff it, so even though people pay, we don't have someone there at the gate checking if they paid or
No,
not.
I understand. Okay.
Cal,
Yes.
I just have to step out for about 5 minutes. So
Okay. Do you want us to break, or do we continue to go?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else on this? Next slide.
And that is actually it. I was going to tell Terry we're about done unless we have any more questions regarding the presentation.
President Runberg? Did Barney leave too? I guess it's just me then, huh?
All up to you.
Well, you.
I've always wanted this. I think that the election was a fraud, and I think that everything is everything
God,
is
no.
fixed.
If you're
And I
being
think
recorded, we're all being recorded. Mine, you too.
I think this is my chance for a coup d'etat to take over the park district. Okay, so I have no further questions. Again, thank you for the comprehensive presentation. You have my input, and then I assume this. I saw the schedule before, but I forgot it, so I assume we'll see it again soon, and either at the finance committee or at a board workshop meeting.
Right. Do you need me to go back up to that?
No.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay. Is
Okay.
there anything else on this agenda item?
There is not.
Okay. Then the next item on the agenda is other business. Director Peters to present.
And I really don't have anything other than our next finance committee meeting is 2 weeks from today, where we will have our draft of our budget book, and that will include the 5-year capital plan.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and I probably could have asked this another time, but you can let us know if the board would like a hard copy of that budget book. We can try and distribute it, 3 to 4 days in advance. We can either have it delivered to your houses or whatnot, if desired. So I'll send an email out and see if everybody wants that.
I can see for myself is that I always find that helpful, especially with something that meaty, that I always like to have a book.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else that we need to go over? Hearing nothing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Yeah, this is Commissioner Grossberg. I have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Yes, Commissioner, President Ruttenberg. Yes, President Ruttenberg. Okay, I heard a second from Commissioner Ruttenberg. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
By the way, I was joking on that, okay?
I don't know if voice impersonations are in your future, not sure.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye.